Hey, what's going on, everybody? You know how we do, so let's just get into it. We're on the road today. Wanted to get this Labor Day, post-Labor Day post together before too much time passed. But as y'all know, Labor Day was just yesterday. And, I think it's just like a holiday that people really don't think about just celebrating it. But like, what is labor, right? Like, what is labor? How does that relate to us and everything? I think we just have a really warped situation about what labor, the history of labor is, what it's been, and like how it is in this country today. So let's just get into it. So let's just start with the fact that like labor throughout history and in this country has always been exploited. Always. There has never been a scenario in which things were fair. Right? I mean, we can even think about like history, like, there were all the clans and like the chiefs and the kings, and they kind of owned everything, right? And everybody else was like kind of given stuff. By the grace of the king or the emperor, you were allowed to have some things, and all his favorite people and cronies were the people that had power and access to things, right? So capitalism in itself kind of created this notion that everyone could potentially own something, right? So you could work, get something in exchange that you could keep, and it wasn't just like for the privilege of living on the king's land, right? But we also know capitalism has a lot of stuff baked into the cake, because a lot of the same players that owned everything, in monarchies and such, still owned everything in capitalism. So in theory there was a greater transfer of wealth, but like still a lot of the same people own things. Like, just, you can follow that and Google that about like what families have been rich for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they more than likely don't change their stuff. So in this nation, we'll just like keep it moderately brief and say that like, look at labor in this nation. Like, the first laborers were slaves. Right? What I'm saying? So slaves, I think we can all guarantee that like that was not fair. What I'm saying? Like, they definitely weren't getting paid or anything like that. And then after slavery was abolished, it was like, how do we get like the absolute most cheap labor? Going into like the Great Depression, right? And why were we in a Great Depression? Because labor was not getting anything. What I'm saying? Like, labor, they were forcing people to work for pennies a day, and like children had to go to work. What I'm saying? They couldn't go to school and all those things. So like, that is labor in this nation. And all these previously leftist socialist ideas like the 40-hour work week, overtime, weekends, HR, like kind of all of these things that we take completely for granted today were all things that capitalism and all the people that own stuff did not want and still do not want. What I'm saying? They're trying to get rid of any protection that laborers can have, because they know that if you isolate labor, they win. What I'm saying? Because people will always be desperate enough to survive, and they need to do things. But if labor comes together, right, and hence unions and such, and I know people are like all anti-union stuff, but like, unions really got us a lot of the rights that we have today that we take for granted on Labor Day. And so just in knowing that like, there was never a time, and I garner to say that there will never be a time, that the people that own the production will ever just do stuff because it's the right thing to do. They will never pay fair wages because it's the right thing to do. They will never give people benefits and time off because it's the right thing to do. They will never do it. And it's not something that we can take for granted, like to suggest that once it's been done, it can't be undone. Right? Like, there are labor union rights that are being dismantled all across the country today. And so as we like reflect upon Labor Day and everything, like, let's actually see what it's about. Like, labor has been exploited. And I would also argue that like, in order for the way that this economy is set up, it needs to be exploited. Like, just think of the way that we said, like, there's concepts, like we can have CEOs making, hundreds of times more than the average worker. We can have people that are working, like, not be able to even have basic health care. They have to work several jobs. And we just think that's like, okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just something that is accepted. And like we blame the labor. Well, hey, the labor needs to be smarter. The labor needs to, have worked hard and done better in school. You know what I'm saying? We do a lot of things to uplift this imbalance that has existed by design forever. And there will never be a chance for people to be uplifted unless labor comes together. Because I pose this question to you: what if everybody did everything right? Right? What if every person that went to school, got straight A's, like went to college, got straight A's, did everything, got all these advanced degrees? Then what? That won't take away the need for a server. That won't take away the need for a busser. That won't take away the need for a maid. Right? For all these things that we deem as unskilled labor, we still need people to, pick the fruits. Like, so education and drive will never, ever change the labor market, right? There will be a finite amount of doctors there can be. There will be a finite amount of accountants there can be, right? And you figure if people get more affluent, they'll need more services, right? Like the more rich you get, the more vacations you get, the more maids you have, the more chef, all the services that we need, that wealthy people have, like that stuff goes up. If you're wealthy, right? But then who's going to do the job? What are we saying then, right? So it's like we're going to have a whole bunch of highly educated bussers. So that brings the argument that like you just have to have fair labor wages, because like we're going to want people to do those service jobs, but it's incumbent upon them to, be compensated well, so they'll want to do it and do it with excellence, as opposed to like what we do now, which is like pay people with minimum wage and then just like blame them for their own suffering or blame them for their own condition. So as we pass this Labor Day, I just wanted to do a slight short video just to get us to think differently about what labor is, the history of labor, and how we can improve things. And we must rise the whole ocean so all ships can rise. Bottom line, at the end of the day, it has to be about creating fair working wages and living wages. It has to be about that. We can no longer be okay with just the exploitation that happens and just having the rich get richer and just hope that one day, like, the rich will be so rich that and that's like really what trickle down economics is, right? That like the hope that one day the rich will get so rich that they will just have all the money they need and will finally do things for the workers. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'll finally give them money. But we know that will never happen. So let's actually support labor on Labor Day. So until next time.